Hello, and welcome back to the third episode of Impact Insights, the video series. If you've watched our other episodes, then you probably recognize today's guest. That's right, backed by popular demand, Lisa McAteer joins us today to talk about one of her favorite things, professional networking platform, LinkedIn. Welcome back, Lisa. We're super excited to have you here today. When we decided that we were going to talk about LinkedIn for this episode, I knew you had to be involved as our resident expert on the subject.
It is a favorite subject of mine, so super happy to get the word out and fill people in on some good tips and tricks.
Let's get right to it because we don't have a ton of time. So to kick things off, why don't you just briefly, very briefly, I know you could go on forever, but why don't you just briefly explain what you like about LinkedIn?
Sure, I can break that down into two parts,
Sure.
two C parts. The first one is you never know who can help you grow your career. So, for instance, I might be connected to you, and you might be connected to, say, an engineer in Ontario who's looking to get a job. And, that person is not connected to me, but he knows that you know people. So he could reach out to you and say, hey, do you think Lisa or whoever might be in a capacity to give me a hand? And you would make that introduction. So for that reason, I love it. That's one area. The other one is with the recommendation section, and I'll talk about that a bit more later. It's essentially a traveling book of references. So say you worked in a big factory and everyone got laid off, and then you go for an interview and they start asking you for references, and you're like, oh man, I don't know my supervisor's phone number. I only had their work email and now everyone's gone. What do I do? So by having that supervisor A, connected to you on LinkedIn, and B, having written you a recommendation, which also creates a halo effect for hiring managers, that means that even if 5 or 10 or 20 years go by, you will have that reference linked directly to your profile.
I actually had never thought about that before. That's very cool. So even I'm learning stuff right now, and I work in recruitment. For the second question, I guess who exactly do you think should have a LinkedIn profile? And I ask this because I remember back when I was just starting university and I heard about LinkedIn and I was kind of like, pretty sure that's like social media for people my dad's age. I didn't think that I needed to have it at that point, and now I see the value, but who should have LinkedIn?
I would say almost everyone. And so going back to what you were referencing, LinkedIn is actually some content in current high schools and universities now. And so they are preparing the new generation to be ready to hit the ground running as soon as they're ready to go. So, sure, there might be jobs where you don't necessarily need a profile, but having that profile in existence might give you a shot to get the job that's the next step up. So, sure, I would encourage anyone and everyone to have a profile. You don't need to spend 8 hours a day on LinkedIn the way I do, but having a profile that is linked to your email address and will ferret information to you as needed, it's beyond value.
Let's imagine now someone's watched this. They're like, wow, I guess I better have a LinkedIn profile. So they create their profile, and now what do they do? What's the next step? There's a lot that you can do to customize your profile, obviously, and really make it your own. So, what do you think the main components are that people should focus on right away?
I break that down into a few different things. The first one is going back to what I was saying about those traveling references.
Mhm.
So ask people for recommendations, and there's even templates that are built in that you can use to make this request. One thing I do coach people on is don't feel like when you're asking for a recommendation that you're asking for someone's firstborn child. You're not. The worst that they can do is say no, and who cares? Move on, ask somebody else. But if you had a good relationship working with them, whether they were a peer or they were a manager, reach out and ask for that recommendation. It's good to have, I would say, 2 per job, so that when you're interviewing for that next job and a potential hiring manager looks at your profile, they'll read it and think, my goodness, Katie McAllister walks on water. I'd sure like her to walk on water with my company. And they get excited about meeting you before they've even spoken to you. The next thing I would say is be robust with your keywords, and that comes down to word search optimization. So you know, a lot of people think, oh, I don't want to put too much information into LinkedIn, but most hiring managers and recruiters can use the platform with a very fancy version of LinkedIn, and we can search it and do all sorts of wonderful things in it. So if you make your profile more robust with, you know, technology words or processes that you do or different things about your job, then when we do searches for people with specific criteria, you pop sooner in that search. So that's really important. The last thing I would say is make sure to put in your education. I know that seems like an obvious one, but you'd be surprised. And then post good content. Make it relevant to your industry and really kind of keep active in that area.
So we kind of just touched on this, but how can job seekers, someone who's actively looking for a role, really use LinkedIn beneficially?
Yeah, for sure. I did a number of different ways. I am going to be naughty and go back to the last question here because I forgot one thing that is so critical. You must have a picture on your profile. You don't have to go and get a professional photographer to do it. It can be just you smiling, looking friendly. But I'll tell you this much, most recruiters and hiring managers will have LinkedIn open at the same time they are reviewing your resumes and applications. And if someone has a smiling face versus somebody with no profile or no picture whatsoever, the other person's going to get contacted first. I guarantee you. Now, going back to your actual question, yes, there are different things you can do. I referenced this earlier, share content. You know, get out there, push out content that is relevant to your industry because that gets other people engaged in what you're doing and interested in your profile and you know, you in general. The next thing I would say is connect with strangers. Do not be stingy with who you connect with and say, well, I don't even know them. Connect. You, like I said, you never know who is going to be the person that plays a key role in the next part of your life. And then lastly, I would say engage people on content that they post. So, you know, I see a lot of people kind of like liking an article, but where it gets really interesting is when you get into the weeds of people commenting, and then that's when people's voices really shine and you start to get a different take on something. And honestly, it improves your visibility when you're commenting as well.
I guess not to just take a negative turn on this, but on the flip side, like what are some LinkedIn faux pas? What should people avoid doing if they really want to have a good, solid LinkedIn presence and make a good impression?
Well, the first one you're going to laugh, but it's a thing. Don't treat it like a dating site.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a thing. Um, the next one I would say is pushing content that's better suited to Facebook instead of being work related. I see a fair amount of political content that comes up, and if it's kind of negative and it's too much, I find myself disconnecting from that person fairly quickly. And then I think the last one I would say is it's a tricky one to navigate, but asking favors of people straight out of the gate. So there's a new feature on LinkedIn that says that allows you to ask for a referral. So if somebody's known to me, like yourself, and said, "Hey, can you recommend me? I saw you're working on this role," I likely wouldn't hesitate at all. But if I don't know you from a hole in the wall, and I'm not, you know, I'm not even connected to you, and my first interaction with you is saying, "Hi, can you recommend me to this position?" Well, why would I stake my reputation to recommending a complete stranger? I wouldn't. So my advice there would be connect with the person on the outset, spend a little bit of time establishing some rapport, and then down the road, if you need to be, you know, recommended or referred to a position, then you can go ahead and make the ask.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm wondering if you could offer any advice to people on when they are connecting with people, maybe people in their industry, some who they know, some who they don't. What's the best way to go about doing that? Should you just send the invitation and then keep your fingers crossed that somebody accepts it, or should you send a message with that, or does it really depend on the situation?
That's a tough one. I've encountered this question before. LinkedIn as a platform strongly encourages people to write that little message at the beginning. And I think when we were all on desktops, this was more of a thing. But now that everyone has LinkedIn on their phone or what have you, the message might come in and they don't even read it. They'll just hit accept for the most part. I would say 80% of people that I send a request to just accept it. The other thing is a lot of people will put in what their actual ask is into that invitation. So they might put in, oh, hi, I'm looking to do a reference on someone. And if the person just clicks accept, doesn't read the message, they're not going to answer you. So I think it is easier and more advantageous to just send that connect request, wait for them to accept it, and then reach out to them.
Okay, yeah, that makes total sense. I guess just to finish up, is there anything that you think is really important that we didn't touch on? Because I will not claim to be the expert, it's you. So if there's anything that any pearls of wisdom you want to offer before we end this, now's the time.
I think the only thing I would reiterate is not to be stingy with your with receiving and sending invitations to connect. I come across a number of people and they'll say, oh, well, I didn't know them, so I didn't accept their invitation. And provided they don't look like a serial killer in the making, I always accept it. You know, it's just like I said, you never know where that next injection into your career will come from. And you don't want to limit yourself by connecting people that you only have ongoing in-person relationships with.
Totally. Well, that makes sense. You wouldn't go to a networking event and then just like only talk to the person that you came with from your company. The whole point is to meet new people and establish those relationships. So awesome. Well, I wish we had more time because I know that you and I both could talk about this subject forever. But we are out of time for today. We'll be back again with the fourth episode of Impact Insights, the video series. I can't promise Lisa will be there, but there's a chance. Let's be honest, she's going to be back. So thank you again, Lisa, for the time, for offering such great advice to everybody. I'm sure you'll be okay if I say they can connect with you on LinkedIn if they would like. Okay, awesome. Well, then that's it for now. I'm Katie McAllister, social media and content manager at Impact Recruitment. I want to thank our guest, Lisa McAteer. If you are actively looking for a new role, or if you're just curious to talk about the job market, we would love to hear from you. You can visit our website. You can check out all the open roles we have there, both internally and roles we're working on for our clients.